All right, welcome in everybody to another episode with the TCP SuperSystem. I am your creator. On the screen is the Bitcoin daily chart, but today it's going to be kind of a Bitcoin special. We got a little bit of news we want to share first. Then we're going to go into this chart and show you what's special about this chart and how you can leverage this thing to make just extraordinary returns. And we do all this for free with the hopes that you will help us grow the channel. Uh, we want to keep this free because we want to share how we've leveraged this with ordinary people who can then turn and do the same types of things on their side. Now, with that said, I do have to say none of this is financial advice. We share the interpretations and the signals to help you in your own research efforts. Now, what I will say is that this system does a fantastic job of helping you identify areas of opportunities where you might want to consider to make a trade. And we can show you how you can leverage these different things in our system to help in that research effort. So we're going to do that today. So we'll get through a couple bits of news real fast, and then we'll go into the chart since that's the gold of the show. So please stick around because if you do not stay around for the super system, you're missing critical information. And it's not just Bitcoin that we cover. We'll do any asset that you want, but specifically, we do want to share the alerts that came in today, as we do every night. But so let's go ahead and get started so we can get through this pretty quick. Just as a recap, we always like to double check this, but fear and greed index at 30, still in the fear mode here, which is great for trying to identify when you may want to take action before it pops. So always a good thing to see there. Um, and I want to go through a couple things here. This is our LinkedIn page, Trim Capital Partners, and this here is from Alec Bakuch. Not sure who that is, but he did a great job of summarizing why it's important to try to get one Bitcoin. And we actually have a video that talks about, owning one Bitcoin can put you in a class of your own. So check this out. So he said, owning one Bitcoin isn't a trade, it's a power move, a hedge, a once per civilization bet on the next money regime. If you have the means to own one and don't, you're not managing risk. You're misreading history. Um, and we kind of mentioned this stuff yesterday, but he said there's only 21 million, and there's really not. There's really about 14 million. Yet there's 56 millionaires, or I'm sorry, 56 million millionaires, uh, trillions in global capital hunting yield. And he said this isn't scarcity. This is structured exclusion. Most of the world will never own one Bitcoin, but you still can. Now it's getting quite expensive, but it's still in reach. I will say we are, well beyond that accumulation zone, and we do never, well, actually, we'll probably never sell our Bitcoin. There's people out there talking about $13 million of tokens, so why would you sell here? And these are prominent people in the space, not just some Joe Blow on YouTube. Um, so again, this isn't about crypto. This is about the end game of money. Bitcoin is your seat at the table. You don't own Bitcoin just for upside. You own it because the rules don't change mid game. You own it because it settles globally in 10 minutes. It's self custodied capital and it can't be frozen, diluted, or defaulted on. Um, and he kind of mentions the same thing. One BTC today is around 84,388 as the time of this video. Um, Sounds expensive, but a front row seat to the next monetary system should be expensive. Um, let's see. Yeah, that's all we really need to talk about there. Let's see, what else do we have? BlackRock has bought another $13 million worth of Bitcoin today. They've now bought 50 million in the last 2 days. Now, I'm assuming they're talking about their ETF. If they are, it's really the consumers within that ETF that are buying, not necessarily BlackRock, but I get it. Cointelegraph here. We're going to watch this video here from VanEck Matthew Siegel, who says central banks and sovereign wealth funds will become more aggressive in adopting Bitcoin, not only as a store of value, but also as a medium of exchange. And I mean, hell, it's all over the news every day. I mean, it's not like this is an extraordinary point of view here. So we'll listen to it just to see what he has to say. It's pretty short, about a minute. So let's take a peek.
That central banks and sovereign wealth funds will start to get more aggressive in adopting Bitcoin, not only as a store of value, but also as a medium exchange. So this year, the Czech Republic, the governor of the central bank there, has initiated a study to analyze Bitcoin for inclusion in their central bank reserves. And then just this week, Russia did a trade with China, partially denominated in Bitcoin, beginning to really use Bitcoin for the first time as a medium of exchange. And that's not for individuals buying coffee, that's for large-scale transactions where countries are using Bitcoin as an intermediary.
The higher the price of Bitcoin, the more stable it becomes. The more likely that you'll have mass institutional adoption and government adoptions around the world, driving Bitcoin game theory, which we talked about yesterday, but we'll keep going.
Currency to do, say, an oil trade. And in that scenario where Bitcoin denominated trade could be, say, 5% of global trade, we get to a $3 million price per Bitcoin. That's a long-term prediction, like 2050, but that's going to be necessary.
Remember, folks, these people in this space are very conservative. Don't think it's going to be 2050. Just opinion.
Think to elevate Bitcoin into the millions per coin.
Millions per coin. That's not me. That is Van Eck. If you don't know who they are, I would urge you to go look. Hedera, I'm not going to cover that. Another one from Cointelegraph. Anthony Pompliano claims that the U.S. is going to buy as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. I mean, again, it's all laid out right here for you, people. You know, if you can't see what's happening, you know, I'm not sure, you know, who can help you. But this is no longer a speculative asset used by drug dealers and cheaters and scammers. This is becoming a legitimate asset class of its own, being adopted around the world, not just here in the U.S. So just keep that in mind. Let's take a look at this one real fast. It's about 51 seconds.
We have indicated that we're going to create this reserve, at least initially, with, you know, confiscated Bitcoin and the like. But do you think that there's definitely a sort of all green lights ahead for the taxpayer effectively to be buying Bitcoin? Because that's what we're talking about. Excuse me?
We're talking about tariff money going for
So I went down to Washington, D.C. last week to the White House. I interviewed Bo Hines, who's the...
See, I swear, sometimes these news people, they don't even know what they're trying to ask because they're reading off a prompter. They don't even know the message that they're trying to portray there. So what they're talking about is leveraging tariff money that the U.S. earns to buy Bitcoin for the strategic reserve.
Executive director of the President's Advisor Council for Digital Assets. And I explicitly asked him this question. And the thing that he said to me that I think kind of took away was not only are they going to have the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, which we have, they are going to buy as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. And
with what money? And does that have to be authorized by Congress?
What money?
So there's a bunch of different ways they could do it. I think what they're trying to figure out is what is the best way to do it. And so a couple of examples would be they could revalue the gold, they could sell some of that, they can then go and they could buy Bitcoin.
Does that have to be done with Congress's approval?
There's a debate around who would be responsible, who would be involved. And they have
all this has to be done with executive order? I mean...
Well, they have an interagency group right now that's working together. And so at that table is everyone from energy policymakers to law enforcement to economic advisors. Kind of everyone is trying to figure this out. I don't think you're going to see kind of...
It's not rocket science.
Very rash decision-making kind of unilaterally. But I do think that working group is trying to figure it out. But you also have things like the tariff revenue or other areas where we may be saving money that we previously were wasting or abusing. And so I think that is probably, to me, the thing that the market most misunderstands is it's not just, hey, we're going to hold the Bitcoin. They're going to actively try to buy Bitcoin. And there's other countries around the world, they may be acquiring Bitcoin by mining and using natural resources that they have there. And so I think there's a lot of strategies here that...
Crazy, folks. Laid out for you. Plain and simple. Let's see. Zappo Bank reported 14.2% surge in Bitcoin trading volume in Q1 compared to Q4 of 24. as high net worth clients actively bought the dip despite Bitcoin's 13% decline. What does the smart money do when things get bad and there's a lot of fear in the marketplace? They buy. Well, the retail folks sell. Don't be the 99%, be the 1%, ladies and gentlemen. Change your life, change your kids' lives, grandkids' lives. This is the changing of the monetary system. Doesn't come around too often. Let's see what else we have. Let's see. This is, I think, part of the same kind of similar messaging here. Bitcoin conference. U.S. Executive Director on Digital Assets says the U.S. may buy Bitcoin with tariff revenue. We'll see if that one's any different.
We obviously have made it very clear that we want to acquire as much as we can get. I've said that repeatedly throughout my time on the speaking circuit over the course of the last few months. And at the end of the day, it stipulates that we have to acquire Bitcoin in budget neutral ways that don't cost the taxpayer a dime. We're looking at many creative ways, whether it be from tariffs, whether it be from something else. I mean, there's literally countless ways in which you can do this. And I'll defer to some of our members inside of the interagency working group to see what ideas they come up with inside of their own shops. But we'll look at everything. Everything's on the table.
Yeah, everything's on the table. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that might be it. This chain link I'll discuss later. Here we go. No, we already saw that one. All right, so that's the news. I do want to go back and share this.
There's a big question right now.
Hang on,
yes,
sorry.
we have indicated that we're going to create this.
There we go. We'll go back and show you our TCP SuperSystem real quick on Bitcoin. I'm going to have a second. Actually, we'll go ahead and do it. No, I'm going to have a second video for the alerts for the day because I don't want to make this too long. So we'll just look at Bitcoin real fast, and then we'll come back and do a second video on all the alerts for the day because there are some good ones, about 8 or 9 different alerts that we'll walk through, interpret them for you, and kind of show you how we would leverage this for those specific ones that are receiving alerts. But for Bitcoin, you can see, again, we got something special today, and that is the yellow up label, which is our confirmed uptrend alert, which followed the potential trend reversal signal. So usually those two things together are pretty good to see. Now, again, you can get a lot of these if you get choppy areas like this. You can see we already had a couple here. But generally speaking, like here, you had the potential trend reversal, the up label, and then boom, you didn't get a down label till up here. So that's what we're looking for. And the way we can try to identify those things is by looking at the other indicators to help support this. So these at the bottom, again, are our hot sensors. There's 3, short-term, medium-term, long-term. There's 2 things that we're doing here. We're looking at the colors. So white, gray, blue, yellow, orange, red to the top side and to the downside. The red areas are typically where you would want to really evaluate opportunities to scale out or in, whether it's on the top or bottom of that midline, and really focus in on those areas. And just as an example, you can see, we hit the red zone here, and that was literally, I don't know how much better you can get than that. Don't know how much better you can get than that. So it works, folks. It took me 2 to 3 years to build this thing. I'm telling you, we're sharing it for free. So please help us out. Share, like, subscribe, whatever you can do to help us grow, because we're going to try to make revenue through YouTube instead of having to sell the actual system, because it would cost a heck of a lot more, to be honest. So, and we don't want to do that. So again, looking at the hot sensors at the bottom, you've got a crossover on the short term. We haven't quite got the crossovers yet on the medium and long term, which is okay. They are both of those are in the white zone, so really, not really from this indicator, not very oversold or overbought. It's kind of in the middle, trending where it should be, which doesn't necessarily matter. Now, granted, if it was red, it'd be beautiful, but You can see we were in that downtrend, identified by that red cloud. We're just turning green, so we need this to hold. This is our mean reversion data up top. There's 3 lines. There's the extreme zones, the opportunity zone, the exit zones, and then again the extreme zones, the hashed lines. So the red fast line, which is the most volatile, is kind of what we want to watch for quick action, right? So we want this thing to stay above that red zone. If it does, the orange and blue ones, which are a little bit slower moving, will trend up into that red zone and beyond it, and that's what we want to happen. If that red line comes back down below that red zone, it's probably going to come back a little bit. So we got to watch this over the next day or two. And we always say for this system, when you get these potential trend reversals and these confirmation signals, always give it a day or two, because there's so many times you'll get, just like right here. If you would have went with this signal for the potential trend reversal to the downside, you missed all that. Now, granted, there wasn't even a confirmation there, but always give it a day or two, because then you really get a better feel for which way it's going. So, like with this being today, we would want to give this at least a day or two and see if we start popping. And then by then, these indicators should be pretty much telling us what we want to know. So that's Bitcoin. Again, stay tuned to the next video, because I'll go ahead and show you the list. But we're going to be covering most of these in the next video. Some great projects. So we got Centrifuge, tokenization, Goldfinch, tokenization, Algo, VeChain, HBAR, Solana. We just did Bitcoin. And I'm going to also show you something from yesterday. I saved this on purpose for Ardor. I'm gonna show you how our system nailed that thing. But we'll do that here in just a few minutes. So again, please like, share, subscribe, so we keep this thing free, coming to you every night. And we will see you in the next video. Best trading.